This is the Big Deal Podcast, brought to you and powered by New Covenant Baptist Church in Albertville, Alabama. And on this podcast, we're asking the question, what's the big deal about all things Bible, theology, and culture? I'm Justin.
I'm Brad.
Welcome to the Big Deal. How you doing, Brad?
I'm doing good, man.
Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Yes.
We told everyone we're going to try each other's food on the pod, and we didn't.
We ate it all.
We ate it all. That's what we did.
That's true.
Yeah, we did.
But my turkey...
It was good, huh?
My turkey's smoked perfectly.
Yeah. Mine was an 8. It wasn't a 10.
I wouldn't say mine was a 10, but 8 is success, buddy.
Everyone loved it. It was juicy. Everyone loved it.
Yeah.
We ate it all.
Yes.
But it was like, I wanted more smoke on it. I wanted I'm going to go like 205, 215 next time. Try to get a couple more hours on it.
Yeah.
It cooked too fast. I was cooked in like an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah, mine took about 3.5,
Yeah.
3. But I also made a smoke bomb. I told you, I'm at the age now where I know a lot about smoking meat. And I've used big green eggs.
Yeah.
I have a big green egg. I have the regular Weber, and I've been using the pellet grill. And the pellet grill does not put out the smoke that a charcoal one is going to.
No,
it just doesn't.
It doesn't.
So I made a smoke bomb.
Yeah.
The problem with making a smoke bomb is you can't put it directly on the flame, right? So sometimes it doesn't even, if you're smoking at 225, it won't hardly get it hot enough to smoke. Yeah.
You light it up. Get it started, you know.
Yeah, but it's not the same. Because a power went out. The power went out. I didn't tell you about this on my son's birthday. And I had to cook baked potatoes on my green egg because we had no power.
Nice.
Dude, they were amazing.
Were they good?
What's
special about it? Was it smoked?
They were smoked, and
nice.
the skins were crispy, and the texture of the potato was almost creamy.
Oh, yeah?
It was so good. And then after that...
How long did it take?
An hour.
Okay. Yeah.
Took an hour. I cooked them at about 450. And then I threw some fat ribeyes on there after. And you know, I'd been thinking, I got a little smoke off the old pit boss out there. It's okay. I was telling myself that. And I threw those steaks on there and closed the lid, and the smoke was rolling out of that egg. And I thought, this is why it's so delicious.
Yeah.
Man, they melted like butter.
I love them. Someone told me about that Butcher and Geraldine again this morning. Hey, it was Derek Martin. Shout out Derek.
We're going.
Yeah. And they said they got awesome ribeyes.
Yeah, well, they got awesome ribeyes actually at Foodland under glass. They're like $20,000.
They're pretty good.
Yeah,
they're not that expensive. It's cheaper than Walmart, and Walmart sucks.
Oh, I don't go there.
Yeah, Walmart's awful meat. Golly,
Walmart is the Shadowland that Simba was warned about.
Yeah,
I don't go there.
It's the worst steak around easily. Yeah. Aldi is a sleeper on steak.
Yeah,
man, Aldi steaks are good.
We got to find out about that Geraldine place. Dear listener, one of my side businesses I'm doing in my next life is I want to have a butcher shop.
You've been talking about it for a while.
I know,
you haven't done it though, man.
I know.
Yeah.
I just got to go out there and do it.
Yeah. Hey, shout out Robert. I heard young Robert.
Yeah.
Heard you got some sheep.
He does have sheep.
Yeah. How about that?
He does.
We're gonna be eating them, I bet.
Oh, we got to shout out Bree.
You got to shout out Bree. Bree.
Cat pass away in the family.
Yeah, that's not why we're shouting out.
Well, I mean, I want to make her feel good, shout her out, and then bring it back down.
We're shouting out Bree because she listens to the pod.
Oh yeah,
and she said that she looks for it.
Yes.
Every week. How flattering! Oh
man,
my
goodness,
she loves to hear a bunch of bozos talk about the Bible.
Yeah, and butcher shop today.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't ask me a question yet.
I was about to. I got a question for you, man.
Oh, here we go.
All right. So, would you rather, for 1 year, have your fingers covered in Cheeto dust, or wear wet socks for the entire year? You have to choose one. Cheeto dust fingers or wet socks.
So it's like a curse. Everything I touch is Cheetos, or I've got
they're always on your fingers.
Just always. You can't rub it off. Anytime you touch something,
if it rubs off, it just
Cheeto
comes
back
back
like
on.
magic.
Yeah. Same with wet socks. You take wet socks off, you got wet socks
I'm
on.
going wet socks, man.
You're going wet socks.
I couldn't do that to people.
You have to sleep with wet socks too.
Oh, I'd have to sleep in my own. What do I get at the end of this year? I hope it's $1 million.
No, you get nothing. This is just a would you rather
No,
scenario.
man, it's going to have to be the socks because, like, for the most part, I won't bother you with my socks.
Yeah.
But I couldn't even hug anybody with Cheeto hands.
Cheeto fingers.
Can you imagine? Like,
It's just like, I mean, both, especially Archer, but both my children have lived, I think, a full year of life coming into so I know what it's like.
yeah, it's so bad. Yeah, I don't think. No, man, we're not doing that. We're not doing Cheetos.
Yeah,
I
I'd go with the socks too. I'd go wet socks also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a sad choice.
It is a sad choice.
Because there's nothing worse than cold, wet feet. That's pretty bad.
My feet might like
Rot.
they might rot. Yeah, they might like be.
Like if we're gonna take out the option of like trench foot and stuff, I'm definitely going with the feet.
Yeah, I think the scenario you have to like take out trench foot and frostbite and hypothermia.
But
like you're not getting, there's not gonna be medical.
I lose so
compromise.
many
Yeah.
things though if I've got Cheeto fingers all the time. I can't even open my Bible.
I mean, I use computer and stuff for Bible, but the big issue is everything's gonna taste like Cheetos.
Yeah,
For an entire year.
Yeah,
Which, let's be real, that's not that bad.
it's not that bad.
Cheetos
No,
is pretty
actually,
great.
the mess is what
It's a
bothers
mess.
me.
Oh man. Ugh. Yeah, I'm gonna go with wet feet too.
Okay, there we
What
go.
a weird
It's
question.
easy.
It was
What a
funny
weird
that
one.
when I thought of that, maybe it cracked me up.
Well, there
All
we
right.
go.
So we're going through Exodus, and we're so far we've been they've come out of Egypt. They've gone to Mount Sinai. Moses has returned there where he saw the flaming bush, and he's gone on top of the mountain. There's this covenant that's been made, and they're receiving the 10 Commandments. And that's where we left off. We're halfway through the 10 Commandments. We went through, well, I say halfway. We only got 3. We got through 3
I think we're in the
four of them.
fourth commandment, aren't we?
We're
Remember
on
the Sabbath.
The Sabbath, yeah.
Yeah.
And so the 10 Commandments are huge, man. You guys know them, or at least you know of them.
Yeah, that's what I tell people when they sin, when they do one of them. I'm like, dude, that's a top 10.
It is one of the top 10.
That's the top 10. You lied to me. That's top 10.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Is lying part of the 10 Commandments?
Yes, it is.
Not lying. That's not
False
what
witness.
Yeah, no, that's not that's
It's still lying, though.
lying is a
You can't bear false witness
larger
without lying.
category that bearing
Yeah.
false witness falls within.
Yeah.
Because not all lying is wrong. Right?
That's
and we'll
true.
talk about that.
Yeah.
So let's start with the Sabbath, right? So getting right at the beginning, verse what is it? Deuteronomy. I'm sorry, not Deuteronomy. Exodus. It's also in
It is.
Deuteronomy. Exodus.
Deuteronomy flash means second law.
Yeah.
Yeah, just so y'all know.
Deuter is 2. Nama. Nama. says,
Yeah, law. Second law.
Yeah. All right. So, verse.
That's where we get
8.
duet.
That's right.
Yeah.
Verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. You are to labor 6 days and do all your work. But the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You must not do any work. You, your son, your daughter, your male or female servant, your livestock, or the resident alien who is within your city gates. For the Lord made the heavens and the earth and the sea and everything in them in 6 days. Then he rested on the 7th day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and declared it holy.
This is my favorite commandment.
There's a lot to talk about in that.
I know. It is my favorite.
Why is it your favorite?
No spoilers, really, because we got a lot to talk about, but it is one of the commandments of God, and he says, take the day off.
Yeah,
and
take
it
a
ticks
break.
everybody off.
Yeah, it does
Like,
tick people
I
off.
don't-
This
Yes.
is a problem. It's a problem for people. Yeah.
He's like,
We'll
I
talk
tell you
about
what,
why in a minute,
I
though.
command you,
Yeah.
I command you to take a day of vacation
Yeah.
every week.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everybody's like, no.
So let's start with like just some of the details in this in the commandment. So Sabbath, the word itself, like we've been told don't talk so much about Hebrew, but this is important.
It's an
people.
important one.
It's it comes from the word 7, right? The Hebrew 7.
Shocker.
It is,
Yeah,
right?
it's the word 7.
It is the
Yeah.
word 7, and so you take the 7th on the 7th.
Yes.
Yeah, is like what's going on?
Kind of.
Yeah,
It's not, the Sabbath was not like Saturday. It was sundown Friday until sundown Saturday.
Yeah, in the Jewish culture calendar, the day started sundown.
Yeah.
So like the evening, the late evening,
So
the Sabbath day
right
now.
the Sabbath day started on Friday evening.
Yeah.
At
And it
sunset.
goes until the next sundown, right?
Yes.
So it's a little different. And that actually is important sometimes for like when we are doing some dating in the Bible, like with
Jesus.
yeah, like
in
Jesus
the
in
grave.
the grave and the resurrection.
Like if you counted his hours, it's not 72.
Yeah, that's right. Which is what we're used to in the modern day, how we count our hours and days. But yeah, so this is the Sabbath. It says to keep it holy, right? And then at the end, therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and declared it holy, right? And so how can a day be holy? What does that mean? You know?
You asking me?
Yeah, I'm
I thought
asking-
you was going to answer. I'm so excited. Holy. So there's a lot of things we can say about holy. One of the things they say all the time is like set apart or designated. So if you say if you said your auditorium of your church is holy, some
Yeah.
people get upset about it. Be like, "That things are not holy." But,
Really?
yeah,
Who get upset about
man. I've been around a long time. People get upset about what kind of glasses you wear.
Oh, yeah.
I like
my,
your glasses.
My experience is like that someone saying the sanctuary isn't holy would be the pariah.
It means
you know?
it has been set aside
Yeah.
for a purpose for God,
Yep.
right? So that's what
It's
it means.
his. It's his space.
That's his spot. It's
his
space.
time with the
But
Sabbath, right?
I think also when people say holy, we think purity.
Yeah, that's right.
Like you think, oh, they haven't sinned.
Yeah.
And that's not wrong.
It's related.
It's related, but to be holy means it has a special purpose designated for God.
Yeah.
So his saints are holy.
yeah.
It's not because they're perfect. They
Yeah.
are set aside, designated for God. And it is shameful to treat the holy things profanely as if they're not set aside for God's use.
The King James would be vulgar.
Yes.
Right? Do you remember that word? Yeah.
do, vulgar.
That's what the King James says. And that's to treat something like it's like an ordinary everyday thing.
Yes.
Right. But something that's holy is something that's God.
And it's hard for
Special,
people to
unique thing,
think
right?
about it in some ways because you think, well, everything's holy.
Yeah.
It's not untrue, but it's not exactly true.
In that everything is God's.
Yeah, everything
yeah.
belongs to God. So,
Yeah.
and whether we drink, we do everything for the glory of God. So
Yeah.
this is set aside. Not really. Yeah,
No,
some
there's-
things are special.
Some things are unique, whenever Moses, earlier in the book, goes up onto and meets with God at the burning bush, he has to take his shoes off,
Yeah.
And because this ground is holy.
Yeah, people
right?
think, oh, it must be special.
It's perfect ground.
Yeah, it's not perfect.
It's, sinless ground.
It was a place
Pure
that,
ground?
it's
No,
just a place God had set aside
It's
for
set
his
aside.
presence.
The same thing with the temple. Like how, the temple is neither sinful or sinless. It's a temple.
The first
Right.
tabernacle was the mountain where God met with Moses.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and that's where they are now.
They're right back at
He's
that
fixing
place.
to come off the mountain with them.
And so the point is that the Sabbath is a day of set aside time for God. It's holy to God.
Yes.
There's a book I read years ago called Till We Have Faces. You read that? It's by
C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful little story. It's the story of Cupid. It's the Greek myth.
Yeah.
He takes the Greek myth of Cupid and was it Persephone? Who is it? I can't remember the people. Anyways, in it, he basically retells this Greek myth in in his own way, and there's some
Him and
nice
Tolkien love to do that.
allusions, right? As
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis does to truth, real things, right?
Yeah.
Related to God. And one of the things he does is super fascinating, and throughout the whole thing is he keeps on talking about how things are holy to a God, like the little g God in this setting, right? This is a holy thing to this God, holy thing to this God. And it really helps you kind of like alter your mind with that word and get your mind to like how that word is supposed to be used. That holiness is about possession, right? And so this is in Exodus 20, God possesses this time. It's his. And so this whole day is supposed to be a devotion to the Lord, right?
Yeah.
And what are you supposed to do on it?
You're supposed to knock off work.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to worship.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So not go to work and worship. And so later on in the story of Israel, we get a lot more details we get some details in the scriptures about the work that they're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
But then they begin to add some things, right? So by the time that Jesus shows up in the first century, was like 1600 years after this, they have like a nice little set of rules that
they built a hedge around the law.
That's it, right?
So did we talk about that?
We haven't yet. That's why I wanted to bring it up because,
okay.
like, if you're a Bible reader today, and like maybe you've mostly read in the New Testament, the Gospels, then you're probably familiar with like this controversy that keeps on coming up with Jesus, where people are, specifically the Pharisees, are coming to Jesus and they're saying, "Why are you doing these things on the Sabbath? Why are you healing people? Why are you working? Why are your disciples eating, this grain or whatever on the Sabbath?" And there's all these Sabbath issues that are going on in the Gospels. And you look back into the Old Testament and you say, okay, here's Sabbath, but where's all those rules that they're talking about?
Yeah. Well, so they call it building a hedge around Torah. And so it's like, hey, we're not supposed to work on the Sabbath, right?
Yeah.
So nobody pick up a needle on the Sabbath, so no tailors will be tempted to do some sewing. So it becomes now, if you pick up a needle, you've sewn.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're not supposed to work, so there will be no picking of grain whatsoever on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And that's where they kind of get on Jesus' disciples a little bit. But that's not the intent of the law.
Yeah.
There's a great, actually, the great theologian Calvin and Hobbes illustrated this the best. So I read this cartoon strip probably 30 years ago. You want to hear it?
Never forgot it.
Never forgot it.
Wow.
I thought it was the greatest.
Yeah.
So Calvin's a little jerk who we love. And his mother says, "Calvin, go get in the bathtub. It's time for bed." And so in the next panel, he's sitting in the bathtub. You see his head, and he's grinning. The next panel, he's sitting there grinning. And in the third panel, it shows it from overhead, and he's in his clothes. There's no water in the tub, and he's sitting there. And he says, "I obey the letter of the law, if not the spirit."
Yeah.
And that is exactly what they did.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly it.
God wanted them to take a break.
Yeah.
But he never intended it. The law was given for life, not harm.
Yeah.
And so that's very important because there's exceptions. Jesus talks about, hey, he's healing on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Why are you doing this on the Sabbath? It ought not be done." He said, "Which one of you, if you have an ox in the ditch, won't pull it out on the Sabbath day?"
Yeah.
And the implication is you should.
Yeah.
Like if you see your ox, and I have literally seen a animal fall and not be able to get up and need help before.
Yeah.
It's an ugly scene.
Yeah.
It's happened to my sheep.
A lot of bleeding. And
A lot of bleating, not bleeding, but bleating. I saw a horse one time. It was super, super hot, and he was shoed improperly. His shoes were worn out, and he was walking up a highway, and it was hot, and the asphalt got slick, and that road was probably 120 degrees. It was awful. This is an awful story. And the horse looked like he was on ice skates, and he fell on the asphalt, and he couldn't get up because his shoes were slick, and that asphalt was burning him. And so people ran over there, helped get that horse up and out of the road. I was in a foreign country. This was not in the USA, and this was a work horse. He was pulling a cart, and which complicated the issue. Anyway, and so you could have got killed because that horse was kicking everywhere, man. It was dangerous. Anyway, I think about that with the Sabbath because animals can fall, especially four-legged ones, and not be able to get up once their feet are over their head. And it's very dangerous because they bloat the way their ruminants, the way their gases are in their stomach. It happens to sheep.
Yeah.
My sheep can get too wet on top, and when they roll over, they can't get back up because they're top heavy.
Too heavy,
and they begin to bloat. And if they sit there, they'll die. And when you get them back on their feet, you have to hold them for a little bit because they're, number one, they're dizzy, and two, their gases have to get right. If you let them go, he's just going to walk and fall back over. Long story short, Jesus said, if you see a ox in a ditch on the Sabbath, get him out, and you'd help your neighbor. And that's work, buddy.
Yeah.
Like getting that horse up was work.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was ever going to get that horse up. They did. So clearly that was work that Jesus approved on the Sabbath. And he's like, hey, we should be able to heal if we can get oxen up.
Yeah.
Keep them from dying. Surely, to goodness, a child
help
of
a
Abraham,
person.
we can help them.
Yeah.
And a lot of the old confessions will recognize this. By the way, I don't care who you are or what denomination you're in. You ready for this?
Yeah.
If you were in that denomination 75 years ago, you'd be a Sabbatarian.
Maybe more than 75.
Well, I'm getting old. 1950?
Before that.
Oh no, we said they had blue laws and that till I was a child.
Oh, you just mean culturally?
I mean culturally, and people wouldn't go to work on Sunday.
Well, you were talking about confessions there. So we're going to get into that conversation. We're talking about working on Sunday.
Yeah,
but we'll talk about that in just a minute.
So like they in those old confessions, it will say.
Oh, we got to wait. Finish this talk about Jesus first, because we're going to get to that.
That's what I was going to say.
Oh, okay, I got you.
It says that you won't work and labor on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And how's it phrased? It says something like works of mercy and compassion accepted.
Oh, you're talking about in the confessions.
In the confessions, it will
so
say.
So what he's saying is like that in our confessions of faith, that most of the confessions, the older confessions, have like a little clause in there. This is like what we believe, right? It's doctrine.
Yeah.
They have a clause in there about what is appropriate on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And so they might say something about like you're not allowed to work, but there's like this little clause that says, works of mercy, and this is because of what Jesus was talking
accepted
about.
Or accepted, not like ACC, but EX. Like
you,
if you're a doctor, you can work on Sunday. If you're a nurse, you can work on Sunday. Some would extend it to hospitality stuff, which is a little gray. Like you got to eat, right? So maybe you can have restaurants on Sunday. But for the most part, if you're not saving somebody's life or doing works of necessity, you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And almost every single confession had that.
Yeah. For a long time.
And by almost, I would almost bet money, but we don't gamble, even though it's not in the top 10. They're all in there.
The mid 1800s is when it started coming out.
People stopped doing it.
Yep. It's because it's not in New Hampshire.
It was.
They
rewrote it.
2 years. But it wasn't the same people who rewrote New Hampshire.
Yeah, it's
different
just
group.
A bunch of people who wanted to work on Sunday.
Yeah, it's
the same one.
It's not in so it's not in New Hampshire, and it's not in the first Baptist Faith and Message. 1920 something 25.
Oh, I'd have to look and see what it says.
It's not in there because they come straight from New Hampshire.
Yeah, it says well, the New Hampshire Confession did have it because sometimes people pull it up.
It's not in New Hampshire. Yeah. It's in Philadelphia. So we're getting in the weeds on this stuff.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about this deal with the reason I think this is important to bring up is because like you go back, like what laws were they following where they thought you couldn't do stuff like that? And the point that we're trying to make is that's not in the Bible.
Yeah.
Like the laws about, picking up the needle or getting the grain or traveling a certain amount of distance on the Sabbath is not biblical. It's not in the Bible.
No.
It's extra stuff that they put in so that you wouldn't end up working on the Sabbath. And that's an important distinction when you're reading in the Gospels and the Pharisees are accusing Jesus of breaking the law, right, of God by doing something on the Sabbath. They're not talking about the Torah. They're not talking about the law that's as written in Scripture. They're talking about their auxiliary laws that they've like added to kind of like wrap around the law. So that I just think that's super important. So, but here's how it plays out in our day. All right, the question is like, well, number one, what is the Sabbath now? Because the Sabbath was Saturday, right? And if you just poll America, right, and you poll maybe even subculture Christianity America, like what day are they going to say the Sabbath is? They're going to say Sunday.
Yeah.
If they don't have Jewish friends, they're going to say Sunday. Sunday's the Sabbath. And when did that happen? How did that, when did you just get to change the day,
It happened in the first century.
Yeah. Well, did it happen?
Yes.
What happened?
Jesus rose from the dead on Sunday.
Yes.
And they started calling it the Lord's Day, even in the Bible.
Yeah. They start calling it the Lord's Day.
Yeah, the Lord's Day.
But they don't call it the Sabbath after that. They call it the Lord's Day. And in the confessions, it's often called the Lord's Day.
Yeah.
And there's this weird little language thing that happens where we make it a synonym for the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And we just call we call it the Sabbath, the Christian Sabbath maybe.
People do call it the Christian Sabbath.
The Christian Sabbath. But the Bible doesn't make that claim that now Sunday is the Sabbath. It never makes that claim in the New Testament. But nonetheless, you have the the theme of taking a day off in honor of God has persisted.
Yes.
In past the first century.
From the jump.
It's persisted. And so they begin kind of like saying that day is going to be the Lord's Day Sunday.
Yeah.
And having church that day, having the big.
Yeah. And I always
church
tell
day
people, actually, this is the commandment that makes me the most uncomfortable because the rest are super easy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't argue with any of the others.
Yeah.
But like this one, and it's so weird because it's like take a day off.
Yeah.
We can't do it. And it's like anything, I tell people this all the time, anything, every single denomination that we would call Christian,
Yeah.
anything they have all agreed on for 2,000 years.
Yeah.
I'm loath to change.
Yeah. And it's dangerous business.
Yes.
To run against the grain like that.
Yes.
It's very arrogant.
Yeah. And so we do that now with this command.
Sabbath is one of those that, it's all right. Well, what we're doing is we're looking back in the 10 Commandments and we're saying, you need to take the Sabbath off. Like don't work on the Sabbath. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, is it Saturday or Sunday? Okay, well, we're going to change it. It's going to be Sunday. Mm-hmm. So we already made a change.
Yeah.
That's not in Scripture. It's not. We're not told to do that. And Jesus,
maybe it's a little bit like the infant baptism argument.
Yeah,
they'll say, "Oh, it's in there.
Well,
it's right there. It's right there."
Minimally, it's not explicit in Scripture. Yeah. It never says anything like that. Now it's going to be Sunday. Here it is from Paul. Paul's telling everyone this is how it's going to be now.
Yeah, but baptism is the new circumcision. and
it doesn't say that either.
The baptism is the new circumcision, and the church has been doing it since we have writings from the church. So.
You're a Baptist, Brad.
No, I'm just saying that's how we get here. Yeah,
cut it out. And so with the Sabbath, it's the same way. So we're going to change.
We got that one Lutheran that listens, and he's like, "There's hope for that one."
Yeah. That we're going to change the day, and not only are we going to change the day, but Jesus, it's the only commandment in that out of the 10 that he does not explicitly like. What's the right word? I was about to say condone. That's not the right word. He doesn't explicitly like restate like this is part of the law of Christ. Take this day off, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't do that with the Sabbath.
No, he says he has a long talk about the Sabbath at one point.
He does. And what does he end up saying about it?
He says he's the Lord of the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And he's like,
and what's the point of the Sabbath? Like, who's the Sabbath made for?
He made it for us.
Yeah. Not you for the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what he was saying was so that episode, the disciples are picking grain because they're hungry. They're traveling and they get chewed out for it because it's supposed to be luck. I mean, I'm sorry, it's supposed to be work, right?
Yeah.
And Jesus is like, that's not what I meant because he made the commandment.
Yeah.
He's like, that's not what
that's
not what I meant, guys. If you're hungry on the Sabbath and you just pick enough to eat so you don't starve to death, that's fine. But I don't want you out here harvesting all day.
Yeah.
But the point of the command of the Sabbath was so you wouldn't work yourselves to death.
Yeah.
And so you'd take a break and you remember God.
Yeah.
Because if I don't make you do that, and this is what he says, you can look it up in Matthew chapter 30. Mm-hmm. He says, you'll play travel ball and you won't go to church anymore if you don't take a day. Yeah, Matthew chapter 30, it says, thou shalt not play travel ball 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And thou shalt not just skip every church service with any old excuse you can because it's deer season.
Yeah.
And he talks about that stuff over there.
Yeah. Try to find Matthew 30 in your Bible.
Somebody out there said, "Oh man, I didn't know he said that about travel ball."
Jesus knew about travel ball. And so, the Sabbath is also like this. It's a faith thing too. It's like, it's a command to have faith in God. We don't see it as much. We don't feel it as much in the modern day because we're not so agrarian. We're not like your ability to survive does not rely so much on the animals living on your plot of land and the food grown on your plot of land, and you having to like say, no, I'm not touching them. I'm not dealing with them today. I'm not pursuing that today. I'm gonna stop. Even though, like, if you did it, you could get a little bit more money.
Yeah.
Get be a little bit more ahead.
Yeah.
We're a little bit more disconnected from that. In fact, our culture is generally set up to where most people don't have to work every day of the week, right?
Yeah.
Most people, I guess I'd say most. Can you say most? Most people
Get the weekend.
have 2 days off on the weekend, right?
Yeah.
It's a little different. So, but to them, it's a big deal. That's a faith thing. Like
It's
God's
still
telling
a
me.
big deal, though.
I think it is. But you know what? It's a different kind of thing. I think like today, this is opinion time. Today, people that are struggling with obeying this rule about this law about taking time off for the Lord it seems more about convenience, pleasure, doing like fun things they want to do rather than like stopping your pursuit of labor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a little different. You agree? Disagree?
Yeah, it's more. They're trying to play.
Yeah, it's playtime.
It's playtime.
And that's why people don't want to wake up.
It's me time.
It's me time. Yeah.
It like if you found out somebody's having to work swing shift and every other week they're out at Mueller making fire hydrants and that's how their work was, probably wouldn't upset you that much.
That's right. We have folks in our church who are like nurses and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and they got to like work every other weekend or something. And that's just the shift.
They're even okay in our confessions.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
that's the shift.
Yeah.
You know,
the thing is, though, it's not what's happening.
Yeah.
People are like, I need to play.
I need to play.
I need to spend time with my family.
That's what they say.
Yeah, I need to spend time with my
What
family.
about your church family?
Yeah. What about your soul?
Yeah, what about your soul for
What
real?
about your God?
Yeah, God.
So
is a day holy
Jesus,
to the Lord?
You know, I need to really back up a little bit because I said that the Lord said He made the Sabbath for us, and so you should take the day off, and that's right. But also for your soul, you need to have a day of worship for God.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about.
And it's for your soul too.
Yeah, and that's for your soul. And it is for you. If you don't worship God, you'll have a miserable life.
It's bad for you.
It's super bad for you. It's like not taking your vitamin.
It doesn't do anything to God.
No,
for you to not worship Him, it doesn't do a single thing to Him.
No,
it's horrible for you.
You need to have a day to worship me, and and to fellowship with the church, and you need that. And if you neglect it, it is Sabbath violation. I'll go ahead and tell you.
Yeah,
because Jesus is the Sabbath. Mm-hmm. And so if you think Jesus is the Sabbath, then go where His people are on Sunday.
Yeah.
And if you skip that, you're violation of the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And so not that Jesus isn't everywhere. And again, that gets back to holy stuff, right?
Yeah.
So Jesus is everywhere. You can worship Him out there fishing on Gunnersville Lake. You can worship Him out in the woods up in your tree stand. But you cannot be at church there. And that's where He's commanded you to be, and He set that aside.
Yeah.
And if your church meets at 10:30 on Sunday, unless you're sick, you should be there.
Yeah, I think so. And so let's think about like the parallel, the modern day parallel of this law for the church. So we're not doing Saturday; we're doing Sunday instead. And but we say things like we are not Sabbatarians.
Yeah.
Right? We say this stuff.
Well,
and we have like we
I
already
don't say that, but some people say it.
Well, our confession isn't Sabbatarian.
You keep saying that, but it is in the New Hampshire Confession.
Where?
Hang on, I'll read it for you.
Pull it up. Yeah, it's not in there. As like New Hampshire 1853.
We believe the first day of the week is the Lord's Day or Christian Sabbath, and it is to be kept sacred to religious purposes by abstaining from all secular labor and sinful recreations, by the devout observance of all the means of grace, both private and public, and by preparation for the rest that remaineth for the people of God.
That's not Sabbatarian, though.
It's the 15th
That's
article.
not what Sabbatarianism is, though. The Sabbatarianism is like London Baptist on that. That's like
it says by abstaining from all secular labor and this is my favorite part, sinful recreations.
We're talking about something a little bit different then, because Sabbatarianism is generally like not something about, don't. It's that it is sinful in every pursuit to work on the Sabbath, right?
Yeah,
that's like what Westminster and like Second London Baptist.
All secular labor is pretty big. My favorite thing, like if I was on the committee at New Hampshire, when it says and sinful recreations, I would be like, we don't need to say that because sinful recreations are right out the door every single day.
I know, right? Yeah.
You could have said recreations and it would have been more powerful there.
Yeah. So I just mean to be kept sacred to religious purposes, It actually, no. So look, are you reading the right one? We believe that the first day
we took it out
of the week. We didn't take this out. This is just straight from New Hampshire. You might be reading a different one, man. Are you reading the wrong one? There's two of them. Remember? Look, we're having like this weird doctrine discussion on here. So there's two New Hampshire confessions. One of them is not Calvinist. The other one is. You might be looking at the wrong one.
Which one's the Calvinist one? That's the one I like.
It's the one that we have, 1853, New Hampshire Confession of Faith.
Oh, that's what I said. They updated it. What I'm saying is, it's the same one.
They're not written by the same people, though. That's the thing. They're like
What?
completely. Yeah, you're looking at the history on this. They're completely different parties that were both trying to respond to Philadelphia, but they're not the same.
Which
group.
was written in like
And
17.
So it's actually not an update. It's a completely different.
Well, don't read the
rendition.
1833 one.
No, it's 1853 is ours. And so,
Thank goodness, I thought you was going to.
Well, that's what I was saying. We're not Sabbath. So this is our confession of faith.
Yeah.
Different, Brad. We believe that the first day of the week is the Lord's Day.
I thought it was an update. I didn't know they were separate.
It's not an update.
Because every other one is almost verbatim.
Yeah.
Every single article except for that one.
You dig into the history. It's kind of fascinating. It was like competing like who's going to set the tone for our doctrine.
It was the Church of Christ and the Baptists, wasn't it?
So we believe that the first day of the week is the Lord's Day or Christian Sabbath and is to be kept sacred to religious purposes by the devout observance of all the means of grace. So we're supposed to go to church, participate in church, both private and public, and by preparation for that rest that remains for the people of God.
That's Article 15?
That's Article 15.
That's exactly what this says in 1833.
You just said all this stuff about working. It's not in
it
here.
says, they took out
So it's
secular labor.
Yeah, it's not in
all
there.
Secular labor.
It's not in the actual one that we've always followed. That we follow and stuff.
We line item vetoed that.
Yeah. Well, it's again, it's not a veto. It's just it's a completely different document. You know,
I'm not sure.
It is. Yeah, you got to look.
They
into
would
it.
get arrested for plagiarism if.
Well, what they're doing,
modern day.
What they're doing is they're taking Second London Baptist or Philadelphia, and they're
plagiarizing it.
They're removing things from that. And so all of our language in these confessions,
yeah, I know, but what I'm saying, the guys who did it in 1853 definitely knew about 1833 because it is the same one, except for like one line item veto.
Well, there's lots of better things though. Like,
in fact, the Second London Baptist Confession is a plagiarism of the Westminster Confession of Faith.
That's
from the
That's exactly right.
It is a fact.
100%.
We plagiarized everything. So, like, here's the deal. This is nothing to do with Sabbath. But whenever I get bent out of shape, when a preacher preaches a sermon that somebody else preaches, I hate to tell everybody, but like preachers did that for 1,800 years.
Yeah, they really did.
Until very recently did it become a thing.
And even when, here's another weird thing, is like, you know, how many variations of Matthew 25 can you hear preached without a lot of symmetry and overlap?
Okay, I'll give you one more. You ready for this?
Yeah.
And this probably happened when the guys were writing 1853. They were definitely copy-paste before there was copy-paste. When you've been preaching and reading for 30 years or so, that's where I'm at now.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't remember where I learned something from. I don't know if this came from my head or somebody else's. Like, there's no way for me to reference it anymore. I don't know where it came from. You know what I'm saying?
There's no telling where this came from.
There's no telling.
I get that. And it's like, you probably heard it from a preacher. But, I mean, how can I don't know.
I don't think I've told this on this podcast. Yeah. This is so bad. So I used to write and be an editor, right, for an online magazine.
Man,
Christian.
You're so fancy.
Let me tell you this
You're
story.
Smart.
Oh, I'm super smart. It's ridiculous how smart I am.
Yeah.
And or how smart I think I am. Might be ridiculous. So I used to write for this online magazine, and one day I was just reading stuff, and I started reading this article, and I thought, this is a banger. This is straight up awesome.
There you go.
And I got to the end of the article, and I had written it.
It said Brad Williams.
Yes. I had written the article like 2 years before.
You impressed yourself.
I had no memory of it whatsoever.
If you can't remember your own stuff, how are you going to remember
That's
if
what
someone
I'm
else
saying,
told
man.
you about it? Yeah.
No.
And it's
people
not
need to chill out.
They
man.
do need, like, is it God's truth, man? Look, now there's a difference between that, like there's a difference between that and someone like taking someone's, family story, and like making it their own for the point of an illustration. That's weird and creepy.
Dude.
You know,
But look, man, I'm going to be honest. I've heard a lot of preaching.
Yeah.
I would rather some people just steal sermons.
Yeah.
Just steal something from somebody, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we should be Sabbatarians or not?
Well, so you need to honor this in like as holy. It is still like has God changed his law?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you big deals.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
So one of the reasons we stink at this is because we are so bad after 2,000 years to this day, and always will be, I guess. We're super bad about law gospel distinction. We're super bad at it. We don't know what to do with the law of God.
Yeah.
We don't know. And so when we read, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, because we're just bad. We think, oh, well, we'll be good on Sunday. And most people never think, well, how did it go from Saturday to Sunday?
Yeah.
And here's what the problem with that is, in some ways, is your teenager is going to get to college, and they're going to say, I go to church on Sunday because it's the Sabbath. Somehow it's going to come up.
Yeah.
And then some unbelieving little punk is going to say, oh, well, how'd y'all move from Saturday to Sunday?
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, your kid's sleeping with their boyfriend.
He's got crisis of faith.
They can't. All the law of God just goes right out the window because it's like,
we didn't explain something well. You know?
turn this down if you got kids. But they're going to be like, Daddy told me there was a Santa Claus, and he told me that Sunday was the Sabbath. And now my whole faith is shattered.
Yeah. So literally this morning, already today, my wife called me. Steph, shout out to Steph.
Hey, Steph.
She called me. She said, it's that time of the year where everyone begins talking about Santa. And apparently this morning at school, Evie went on a one little girl crusade.
Mission
to inform everyone that Santa and elves are not real.
Yes.
And they're ridiculous to believe so. That they are. That the presents come from their mommies and daddies, and that Christmas is about Jesus.
Yes.
And I'm proud of her.
Yeah.
She's right.
My daughter got punished in school for that in kindergarten. I did not find out about it for years. They were talking about some teacher was like, hey, Santa's coming in this reindeer. And Zoe was like, there's no Santa. He was a guy in the first century or the third century named St. Nicholas. And he did this. And she made her put her head down on the desk the rest of the day for telling her friends there's no Santa Claus. And my wife hid this from me. Yeah. Because I would have said something.
Yeah. At least one thing.
At least one.
Yeah. So you, how do we do? I'm talking about that for Saturday.
Because of Saturday, obviously.
Yes. Saturday?
I don't know.
What about it?
We're so dumb.
How did that happen? You said something about Santa.
Sabbath day, Jesus, Santa Claus ain't real.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So like, you lied to me. Yes. So now I can't believe anything you've said.
All gospel distinction.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for bringing us back.
Yeah.
So like we don't know what to do with the law, and so it's like, well, we can't. All these other laws make sense. Like don't murder.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
All on board for that one. Yeah.
Don't commit adultery. Used to make sense. Apparently in our culture now. Good Lord, man. Yeah. Oh, don't get me started on that. Yeah. So anyway, don't steal. We get that, and then it's like, don't break the Lord's Sabbath. Okay. What do we do with that? Well, it must be, obviously, it's as applicable as not stealing, so we'll just keep it on Sunday, and we don't know why, and we won't talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's what happens. We're not good with law gospel distinction, how they work together, how they're separate. Yeah. And so that's why we keep having these
So can you work on Sunday or not?
Yes and no.
Okay. Well, tell me. Give us some distinctions on that.
Okay. How complicated we want to get this.
I think it's a real thing. I think people it's an important thing.
It is.
People are wondering. It's like they're,
but not just work. Okay, work is like a bad thing. Like they didn't have travel ball
rest
in Israel.
Yeah,
rest.
Yeah,
worship, rest. Worship, rest.
Yes.
This is what. Should we still observe a day, or do we, where you should dedicate it to worship and rest? And the answer to that, I think, is yes.
Yeah.
And so if you take this as, I don't know, say liberal, that's not the right word. A lot of people say, well, Jesus is our Sabbath. Yeah. And I think that's right. Yeah. Hebrews talks about it.
They're saying, Jesus is our Sabbath, therefore I don't have to make Sunday happen.
Yes, I don't have to make Sunday happen because Jesus is our promised Sabbath rest.
My Sabbath is on Friday. My Sabbath is on Monday.
Actually, they will say they won't even have a Sabbath.
Yeah.
They'll just say, Jesus is my Sabbath. My Sabbath is every day.
But I'm sure you've heard this too. Like, my Sabbath is this day. My Sabbath is this time during the evening or whatever.
Right.
You know.
So when this command is given on the Sabbath day, they're supposed to set aside the worship of the Lord for their families and for the gathering of worship.
Yeah.
Right? So now we do that, and we have this prerogative as a New Testament church, 99.9% of all churches, gather sometime between 9:30 in the morning on Sunday to, noon on Sunday.
Yeah.
Get there.
Yeah.
You need to be there for worship, and you need to rest that day.
Yeah.
And
you go play disc golf that afternoon.
And if you work every Sunday and your church is one of these places that, like, they got Saturday night church. A lot of places, maybe they're more blue collar, more swing shift places. Guys can't get there on Sunday. They have a Saturday night service. Do that. Get there. Get with the people of God. The gospel is not just about you. It is about the church. And it is about the gathering of the church. So do we keep Sabbath? Yeah. We keep it on Sunday morning here at 10:30. Go to church. And can you work on Sunday? Yeah, you can. You can work on Sabbath. There were things you could do. You could pull your ox out of the ditch, right? We know that for sure. You could save somebody's life on the Sabbath. You can't pick up sticks, though.
But you can't forsake the gathering of the brethren.
No.
Which is Hebrews
10:25, baby.
It's important. It's a commandment in Scripture, New Testament stuff. The gathering is so important, man. It's
we talked about holy and what it means. The church, okay. How do I put this?
I don't mean online stuff. Online church, like watching online. Look, I know that's controversial, whatever.
No, it don't count.
It don't count.
Don't count.
That's you listen to a podcast and listening to iTunes.
It does not count as church.
Is it good? Is it helpful?
Yes.
Is it good?
Yes.
Yeah, it's good. But it's not
church.
The fellowship of the body.
You heard a sermon. That's great.
Yeah.
That's not church.
Christ didn't tell us to.
So I'll tell you something I said Sunday.
Podcast.
I tell you something I said Sunday. People critique us sometimes, and I had to correct them. Our church is supposed to start at 10:30. And people say we don't ever get started in here at 10:45 sometimes.
It's
and
great.
I said, here's the deal. You think worship starts with singing. I think it starts with you talking. And so if people are fellowshipping sometimes, I'm the one that gets it started sometimes. And I look out there and people are having a grand time. There's people standing out in the foyer. They're chatting. Our Trevor Gever, shout out. He's our lead guitarist, singer in the band, and he's out there just chatting it up with some visitor. I'm not calling him away from that to start church. I'm not. I will never do it. Never. Now, if he's talking to some of our church members, I'll do it. But if he's out there just chatting it up and they're having a good, I'm thinking, man, they need this. Actually, I'm the one who preaches, right? They need that interaction maybe more than they need to hear what I have to say. I'm serious, man. Like he might have said.
Usually I could just throw everything out that you say.
Right, exactly. Oh, you probably forgot it. Hey, no, man. No,
that was a joke.
But let's be serious. You probably forgot it by Tuesday. But if you're out there, or Trevor's out there, or my wife's out there, or somebody's out there talking, they said, how was your day? And they said, lousy. And this is what happened. I think I'm going to lose my job. And they're sitting there having a conversation like, hey, sorry, look at the clock, bud.
It's time to start.
We got to start singing. Stop it with your silliness.
Boo.
Boo. Boo. So we're actually having church from the time this door's open, man.
I love it, man.
And so we fellowship with one another, and you cannot get that online. Nobody from online world's going to ask you how you're doing.
No.
And they're not going to be able to see you at Foodland, and they're not going to be able to see you out there. They're not going to be able to invite you to a movie. They're not going to be able to say, we've got leftover turkey, you want some of it, or do you want pumpkins that I've got left over to feed your sheep, or whatever, man.
Well, it's why do we have an online presence? And we do. We record our services.
Trick people into coming here.
Well, we do it for a couple reasons. I mean, it's not trying to trick them, but it is a helpful front door to help people understand what we're about. That's one thing
for real. Yeah.
The second thing though is that it is still a resource. The preached word is a resource that we want to preserve.
Mostly online source. If you just pin me down, what do you do it for? Didactic. We do it for teaching. maybe I said something on Sunday. You want to go back and hear it again? I seriously doubt it. Or maybe like you did have a work of necessity.
Yeah.
You were out of town. You were sick. You were on vacation, and
You're
just want to
serving
watch.
in the nursery.
Yeah, you're serving in a nursery.
Yeah.
You want to watch it.
Yeah.
Or like 100%. We had visitors the other day. I don't know if they'll ever come back.
Yeah.
God bless them.
Yeah.
Because I'm stupid. But also, I was talking to them, and they just moved here, right?
Uh-huh.
And they said, we've been visiting church. We just moved here. And I said, I feel sorry for you. Because finding a church is hard, man.
Yeah.
It is awful.
Yeah.
It's like really rough. It's a huge decision.
You're like picking who your friends are going to be.
And
you know?
shout out Chris Johnson. I
Yeah.
said, look, if this ain't no good, man. First Baptist Church Valorable is pretty good. You ought to go. Chris Johnson loves the Lord. I didn't send him to you, Q.
Shout out to First Baptist Albertville. Y'all are good people over there.
Good
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
I mean, next time I'll send them to Life Point, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe Q. Maybe. So
Yeah.
That's what it did. So I felt for them. I hope
Yeah.
they find a place that
Yeah.
they fit. And you know what?
We should have Chris on the podcast sometime. That actually would be
My
fun.
goodness, I love him. You know, he basically taught me everything. I am his fault.
Yeah. You were his intern or something.
I was
right?
his intern way
Yeah.
back in the day.
That would actually be a fun little series to do on the podcast.
man.
Is like have some of our friends,
Yes.
past friends or
And
something.
they fuss
Yeah.
with us, talk about how arrogant and stupid we are.
Oh,
yes.
no.
We need it. We need to be put down. If you get him on there and say, can you believe Brad didn't know that 1833 and 1853 are old confession were separate documents?
I'm surprised you didn't know that. Like that seems like something in your wheelhouse.
I don't
You
know.
probably used to know it.
I did. I tell everybody
Yeah.
I have a 1 terabyte drive in my head and I stuff 5 terabytes in it every day.
Yeah.
I'm stupid, man. I can't believe the stuff I've forgotten. And I'm even more dismayed at what I remember.
Yeah.
You don't get to pick that stuff.
Yeah, you don't. So let's do some. Man, we spent a lot of time on this. Well,
It's
the entire
important.
podcast
Well,
on
we
the
got to
Sabbath.
tell them though. We
So-
got to tell them. Can they do travel ball?
Can they do travel ball on Sundays?
You want me to tell you what I think?
Tell me what you think.
No,
At all?
no, I wouldn't.
Oh, that's a different thing you said there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
I would not.
So you're not giving thus saith
But I
the
think
Lord
I have
on this, right?
I will not give them the. I would actually. If you miss 7 Sundays in a row because your
Yeah.
kid's playing soccer, I think you're in sin.
Yeah. So what? There's like
If you miss one, like, oh, we had a tournament on Saturday and it rained out and we played it this Sunday and you
Yeah.
miss one,
so
not a big deal.
The way
but if like you sign your kid up for soccer, baseball, basketball, whatever, and you know that every single Sunday for the next 3 months they're going to have a game, you should not do that.
yeah, there's 2 levels of that. And then
go
I'm
ahead.
hearing what you're saying.
Yeah,
It's
talk
like
to me.
one is like the wisdom in it, like knowing what you're getting into. It's like the person who's like, it's like this is the only illustration that came to
I
my
can't
mind.
wait to hear it because it's going to be bad.
It's like I'm gonna go do ministry at the strip club.
Oh.
Right. Like I'm gonna go
Yeah.
share the gospel in the middle of the strip club, right? It's
Yeah.
like you what would if someone told you that in our church, what would you say? Like
Okay, I'll tell you.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
it was a dude, I'd say you are stupid. You better
Yeah.
do it from the parking lot.
Make
If
better
it wa-
decisions.
But
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
if it was a female and she said, and she was like married and straight.
Yeah, yeah.
And she said, I'm going to do ministry to women who get trapped in a strip club.
Right.
I'd be like, how can we help you?
Yeah, that's right.
I
but,
would.
But imagine it's a dude, right?
But with a dude, I'd be like,
it's
oh,
what-
okay.
Are you just asking for sin? Like you just like running right off the
oh,
cliff?
Are you,
like,
are
what
you going to
doing?
pay them to dance on your table so you can talk to them?
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
what are we doing,
Yeah.
buddy?
And
Yeah.
so that there's like a level in which like
You don't send alcoholics to the bars to witness.
Exactly. It's like signing up for this. Like I'm signing up to be gone from the body of Christ.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
choosing it.
Yep.
I've like given myself over this. Like we're not going to be here for this amount of time because this is more important. is what you're saying.
Well, you know, there's some
that's
things
sinful.
There's some
You know?
wisdom too. Like wisdom, ignoring wisdom is sin,
Yeah.
and wisdom is not law.
Yeah.
It's much harder.
Yeah.
And it's much better.
Yeah.
So like if a kid comes and they're like 19, 18, 20 something, and they're dating somebody, say, "Oh, how's it going?" Yes, like, yeah. What denomination are they? And they say, "Well, they don't believe in Jesus." Be like, "You're stupid." And they'll be like, well, I might lead them to the Lord. I'm like, more than likely, they're going to lead you to the bedroom.
Yeah. You read the Old Testament, man?
You need to like pull the ripcord on this thing right now.
Yeah.
You need to have a serious conversation and be like, Jesus is everything to me, and he's nothing to you. And these two things can't get together.
Yeah.
And so if you're not interested in the faith and coming to church with me and like looking through these things and thinking about it, we're done right now.
Yeah.
We cannot have a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
Now, do people like to hear it?
No.
It's the same thing, man. It's
It
the
is.
same thing. You're flirting with absolute disaster.
Yeah. And if you don't think that keeping your family out of church is an absolute disaster, there we have another problem.
Yes.
It's a huge disaster. It's
I don't come to church because I have to.
I look forward to it. I love it. It's like, it's like highlight of the week, man.
It's be like, hey, man, you've got season tickets to Disney and you never have to wait in line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you live in Orlando.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. I'm
All of
going
my
to Disney
friends are
all the
here.
time.
I love this place, man.
Yes.
God has like built this wonderful little family here.
There's not a single person I duck on Sunday. Never.
Not one, Brad.
Not one.
Hey, everyone. Shout out to our whole church.
Church, I don't duck nobody. Now, some people you got to get up there and preach. You know, they'll hold you a minute longer. But other than that, there's nobody I dread to see. I am happy to see everyone, especially your children.
Yeah. Our kids are great. At our
We have
church,
the
man.
best kids,
They're
man.
awesome. They're so
High
much fun.
fives for Brother Brad every single time. And they try to give me high fives hard enough to hurt me.
Yeah, they do.
But what's funny,
That's my favorite part.
But what's
Yeah.
funny about that is they hurt themselves.
They do.
There's an illustration in there somewhere.
They just can't handle having
Can I tell you something else about the Sabbath, man?
Okay.
It has nothing to do with the
All right,
Sabbath.
tell me the Sabbath.
Every Sunday we take the Lord's Supper because we're Christians. And
That's right. So what about all you heathens who don't?
so please, if you listen to this, I've said it 5 times, but I'm going to keep saying it. We have these little plastic cups.
Yeah.
And they're circular that the grape juice goes in. Everybody knows about it. And our people file down and they take the cup out of the
metal thing.
the metal thing, right? And it's a round hole. It's a round cup, but they're very fragile plastic. People get nervous. They grab the top of that cup and they squeeze it.
Do they break it?
No, they don't break it. But you know what happens when you squeeze a circle? It turns into an oval.
Yeah.
They think the cup is stuck because they can't pull it out.
Oh, but they squeeze.
But it's because they're squeezing it. The tension is keeping it. And they're like, that one's stuck.
We need to make a little how-to video on how to do Lord's Supper.
So I always say gentle, but they don't listen. They don't listen because they're freaked out. You know, in front of everybody, and people are behind them. Like, I'm like, and they're like, they're all stuck.
Oh,
like,
man.
they're not
I'm
stuck.
always on the stage. I never get to see this stuff.
I'm always like, no, gentle.
Yeah.
And you can't force the Lord's Supper. I don't know. There's an illustration there, man.
That's so funny.
But like, hey guys, don't squeeze the top of the cup.
All right. I don't know what that has to do with Sabbath, except that we do that on Sunday. Maybe.
Yes.
Let's give the big deal about the Sabbath. Let's wrap it
okay.
up. Yeah.
You want me to?
I want you to.
I thought you was about to.
No, you do it.
The Sabbath day, in the Old Testament, they would kill you if you didn't keep it.
Yeah.
That's legit.
Yeah.
They will kill you. There's a story in this very book of the Exodus. There was a guy, he was Egyptian because it was a mixed multitude. He came out. He's picking up sticks on the Sabbath. And they arrested him, sort of.
Yeah.
They held him as like, hey, he was picking up sticks. What do we do with this guy?
Yeah.
And Moses says, well, let's ask the Lord. I don't know. And the Lord says, kill that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was a big deal, right? We ought to take it seriously. I think with the book of Hebrews that Jesus is the fulfillment of all law. He is the Alpha and the Omega. Every promise of God is yes and amen in him. So if you want to say that Jesus is our promised rest, that we rest in Christ, I'm okay with that. That's good. But I also believe the church has the keys to the kingdom.
That's in the Bible too.
Yes, the church has the keys to the kingdom, not Peter. The church.
Yeah.
The gospel is the key to the kingdom.
Yeah.
And since they kicked us out of the temple on the Sabbath in the first century, we have, as Christians, gathered on the Lord's Day. That's what the church determined.
That's the tradition.
That's the tradition with a capital T, baby.
Yeah.
And you are commanded to meet with the church.
Yeah.
Period. And so if you what do you I don't care what you want to call it. You want to call it the Christian Sabbath, you want to call it whatever, you should be there.
Sunday.
It's on Sunday and you ought to be there.
Yeah.
And there are very few excuses that God would accept for you to miss it. And I'm going to tell you what happens if you don't. You will teach your children that there are more important things than fellowshipping with the Lord in His church.
Yeah.
And they will find their pleasure.
And they will believe you.
They will believe you. They will see what you love.
Yeah.
And they will love it.
Yeah.
Or they, I think a lot about this, man. There's so many things in history that are beautiful. Benjamin Franklin was a heathen, right?
Yeah.
He was great friends with George Whitefield. Did you know that?
I knew that they were acquaintances. I know they were
he
friends.
he published all George Whitefield's works.
Is that right?
Yes. When George Whitefield was in the United States, or at that time,
tell everyone who George Whitefield is.
George Whitefield was a first Great Awakening evangelist preacher.
Yeah.
And
Great dude.
Great dude. He stayed with Ben Franklin. He was contemporaries with Jonathan Edwards. He stayed at Jonathan Edwards' house, and when he saw Jonathan Edwards' relationship to his wife, he wished he was married. So it's like little sweet things you can find out.
Yeah.
And Whitefield had his problems. But anyway, he stayed with Benjamin Franklin, who was a renowned, unbeliever. He's kind of a deist guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And he made fun of Whitefield all the time in a very friendly way. Like he would say, "I don't bring any money to a Whitefield sermon," because Whitefield had an orphanage, and he would make an appeal at the end, "Help my orphanage in Georgia." And he said, "I can't, because every time I go, if I have any money, I give it all to George Whitefield to do his orphanage and stuff." And George Whitefield actually died, I think, at Ben Franklin's place. Anyway, some people, his dearest friends, were picking on Ben Franklin for being George Whitefield's friend. And they asked him, "Do you believe that stuff George Whitefield preaches?" Straight up, because he published everything. He said, "Do you believe that stuff George Whitefield preaches?" And this is one of the most beautiful things I've ever read. Ben Franklin said, "No, but George Whitefield does." And that's what your children will do.
Yeah, that's right.
They might one day go out and be apostate and say, "Do you believe that stuff your parents believed, or you believe Christianity?" They'll say, "No, but my dad did."
Yeah.
That's what you want.
And how sad would it be, for your kid to look back, your even spouse or something, to look back on this time and for them to say, "Nah, they were pretty insincere."
Yeah, they weren't sincere. They went to church on Sunday, but it made no difference.
It didn't
in our
really
home.
mean anything.
No, it's just a thing we did.
Oh,
Golly.
Now be sincere.
Yeah. There's one other thing Ben Franklin did with George Whitefield when he first met him.
Did he get struck by lightning?
He did
with
not.
a key?
No, that was a different thing.
Oh, okay.
No, George Whitefield went and preached in Philadelphia, and Ben Franklin at the time hadn't met him yet, and he had heard that George Whitefield preached to crowds of 35,000 people, and he thought, that's cap.
35,000 for real?
Yeah. He
Wow.
said there's no way he could preach that many people. It's just not possible. We didn't have megaphones or microphones. He said it can't happen. So he knew he was coming to Philadelphia to preach in the town square. And before he got there, Ben Franklin walked around and he took measurements of how big the square was.
Yeah.
And he said, a person can occupy about 1 square foot, right? And so we can get 30,000 people in this area. And so George Whitefield comes. It's packed with people. And Ben Franklin goes, and he walks around the outside, the perimeter of this gathering. And he said, everywhere I went, I could hear George Whitefield preaching. And he said, after that, I was reconciled to the fact that he could preach to crowds that large.
Man, that's
He
impressive.
did the math. Ben Franklin did the math.
He just went and mathed up the preaching.
He did. I can't remember how many thousand it was, but it was it made me think, how did he do that?
Was it 30, or were you just throwing a close number?
It was many thousand.
Yeah, many thousand.
And he was like, you can't possibly hear him. But he was like, I heard him.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the famous actors, I don't know what this has to do with Sabbath, but it's fun. One of the famous actors of their day said that he would give something like 5 golden guineas to be able to say, "Oh," like George Whitefield.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
there's a saying about that for John Chrysostom.
Yeah.
Back in the earlier centuries. I don't know when that 400.
Was he pre-Nicaea?
I can't remember.
The Golden Mouth. Yeah,
He's in
one of my favorite.
Byzantium.
Yeah, let's look it up.
Yeah.
Anyway, tell the story. I looked at it.
No, well, his name is like Golden Tongue or something.
Golden
right?
Mouth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Golden Mouth. Yeah, yeah, because he was apparently just such a good orator. Yeah,
407. He was right around.
407. Yeah,
Nicaea. You might have said 400.
I said something like that.
You should read his works.
I have.
He
Read
was
a
an
lot of them.
expositor.
Yeah.
I don't agree with some of what he said, but
Yeah.
like he could, on some passages, hop in our pulpit on Sunday, and you would think he's just a guest preacher from
we looked at all this
2024.
stuff. We looked at this stuff. Remember when we were doing that series this summer for the liturgy redo thing that we did?
Yeah.
And we read some of his stuff. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That was cool. Yeah. All right. Well, that's the big deal
is
on the Sabbath.
Set aside time to rest and
Go
be
to
with
church,
the Lord.
man.
Look, if you can do it, if it's within your power
Yeah.
to do, go to church on Sunday, eat something, take a nap, hang out with your kids,
Yeah.
get off a phone or TV or
Yeah.
whatever. Just like hang out with people.
Yeah. Spend time with the people of God.
Yeah.
Oh, and for some reason it's hard. I don't. Yeah.
Rather-
Well, what it is, it's hard to say no to the other things.
Yeah.
And God wants us to do that, though.
He does.
That's the whole point of it.
Make God a priority.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to do the rest next time.
Yeah, we'll do the rest next time. We were planning on doing them all today. We just spent all. You have so much to say about the Sabbath. You really care about this. All right. Which is good, I guess.
Yeah, I
it's
had
good.
a Sabbatarian guy try to talk me into it one time. And I saw the beauty of what he was saying.
Yeah.
He wrote a book. It's called Call the Sabbath a Delight.
Yeah.
Chantry.
Nice.
Yeah.
Call the Sabbath a delight.
Call the Sabbath a
That's a
Delight.
good name for a book.
It's a quote from the King James.
Oh, yeah.
My people should call the Sabbath a delight, I
Oh,
think.
okay.
Yeah. And
Dude, that's some wonderful Shakespearean language, isn't it?
Call
Yeah.
the Sabbath a delight.
Oh, I love that.
That's the point of it.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, everyone, thank you for listening to the Big Deal Podcast. We'll be back next week looking at the rest of the 10 Commandments.
Probably.